So our garnish for our beef stew is going to be some dumplings. And we're going to make them with a little bit of cheese in them and some chili powder. So what I've got in front of me is the ingredients that we need. The measurements are quite straightforward. I've got 1 clove of garlic, I've got 2 of these little pots of grated cheese, and you'll notice that it's finely grated as well. I've got 200 grams of flour, and I've got 100 grams of suet. Okay, now suet is a fat and it comes from around a cow's kidneys. Okay, so the ratio is half the amount of fat to flour. Okay, so 200, 100, quite straightforward. I've also got some chopped rosemary, and I've got some water as well. Okay, so dumplings, nice and easy to make. In with the flour into our mixing bowl, in with the suet, in with the garlic, rosemary's going in, as is a little bit of chili powder. That's optional, okay, so if you don't like the flavour of chili or you don't like the heat, don't put it in there. And then all we're going to do is mix it around until it's all combined. Then we've got our water. Okay, now what we need to do is just add that water a little bit at a time. Mix it in, a little bit like when we're making bread. A little bit more. And what we're looking for is a really, really sticky dough. Okay, so you can see that that's a really, really quite sort of sticky mixture. Next thing I'm going to do is mix our cheese in. Okay, and that's just going to dry it up ever so slightly, is our cheese. So that's the reason for not putting that in till now. And we're just going to mix that in really, really well. And we also need to season it a little bit as well, not too much, because I've used some salt to crush the garlic. So in there I'm going to put a little pinch of salt and a little pinch of pepper. So now we've got this sticky dumpling mixture, and I don't know whether I mentioned or not, but it's self-raising flour that I used. So I might have said plain flour at the beginning, but it's actually self-raising flour. And I'm going to put this onto a slightly floured surface. Okay, so a little bit of flour on there, just because I'm just worried that it's slightly too sticky and it's just going to stick to everything. I'm going to roll it out as well with a rolling pin. Okay, so I've got a rolling pin handy, and again that's going to need a little bit of flour on it as well, just to stop it sticking to the mixture. And I'm going to just roll it out just really, really gently, and that's about the right thickness. So it's about the thickness of my hand, if you can see that. And then just using a biscuit cutter, I'm going to cut out some dumplings. Okay. Okay, so I've got 6 nice dumplings there. Now they will rise when they're in the oven. Okay, that's the reason for only having them so thick. On here I've got a little bit of oil, and on the oiled tray I'm going to put some greaseproof paper. The reason for it being oiled is I don't want the greaseproof paper to flap around while it's in the oven. Okay, so dumplings go on the greaseproof paper. Now some people bake their dumplings on the top of the stew, some people bake them separate. We're going to do a combination of both. And at first we're going to bake them separate in the oven, and then once they're sort of cooked through, we're going to put them on the top of the stew and finish them off on the top of the stew, because that soaks up some of the flavour from the stew and just gives them an extra taste or flavour. Once I've got cheese on top of these, then they're going to go into a preheated oven, about 180 degrees, and they're going to bake for about 10 to 15 minutes. So our stew has been in the oven probably for about 45 minutes, and I'm bringing it out just to check that it's not boiled dry. Luckily this isn't dry, it's quite a nice consistency, but I am going to put a drop more water in there just so that some of the meat is covered back over. Once I've got the drop of water back in there, or stock, top goes back on and it goes back in the oven for another 45 minutes. So now the stew's been in the oven for the full hour and a half. Hopefully it's completely ready. Handle's hot, be really careful. And it's time to taste it at this point. So, little taste. Does it need any more seasoning? Yes, just a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, and then this is going to go back in the oven, but with our dumplings just on the top, as I said, just to soak up some of the flavour in there. So dumplings on top, and then this is going to go back in the oven as it is, not covered, for about 5 minutes, just so those dumplings can soak up some flavour. So our stew's come out of the oven with the dumplings in. I'm just going to lift the dumplings to one side, just so that I can get to the stew, and just using a nice sized spoon into a warm bowl, we're going to put a really good sized portion. Not too much, we don't want an absolutely massive portion, just enough to get the appetite going. Nice bit of the meat. See if we can get any selection of the vegetables in there. Some carrot in there. We've got the baby onions, remember. One last bit of meat. And I'm going to put just one dumpling on top, which is absolutely plenty. And then lastly, a bit of garnish. Our usual, so pea shoots. Make sure the bowl's nice and clean for presentation, and then there's our stew with dumplings.